I'm Sophie, and I with Ethan, the love of my life, a year ago. Our connection was funny, kind, and all I could have ever imagined. I am quite content with my family life. I was an accountant who worked primarily from home. Though there was more to my work life than what first caught the eye, I liked my job. Ethan was quite busy running his own car parts company, but it also gave us a lot of quality time together. We enjoyed spending time together in our leisure time, and we frequently went to parties with Ethan's wide network of friends, co-workers, and business associates. I always enjoyed the opportunity to mingle and be a part of Ethan's world, so I looked forward to these get-togethers. Ethan walked in one bright Saturday morning and grinned from ear to ear while I was reading emails and drinking coffee at our kitchen table. "Hi there, lovely," he murmured as he kissed my cheek. "Daniel is hosting a cookout at his residence. I had the idea that we could go over, meet up with everyone, and have a few drinks. Are you game?" I immediately said, "Sounds perfect," anticipating the evening. By the time we got at Daniel's place at 7:00 p.m., the air was filled with laughing and the aroma of cooked meat. I saw a beautiful blonde woman I had never seen before as we moved through the crowd. She was laughing across the yard as she spoke animatedly with a group of individuals. "Who's that?" I questioned Ethan. His face tensed almost slightly as he nodded at her. "That's Isabella, my ex-girlfriend," he added. Before I could say anything, Daniel saw us and gave us a wave. "Ethan and Sophie, I'm happy you could attend. Let me present you to everyone, please." Isabella fixed her gaze on us as we got closer to the group. Her eyes did not open up with a widening smile. With a fake sweetness in her voice, she remarked, well, if it's not Ethan and his wife." She spoke the word wife like a vulgar term. Determined not to let her get to me, I faked a grin. I extended my hand and said, "Nice to meet you, Isabella. I'm Sophie." She gave my hand a dirt-covered glance and turned back to stare at Ethan. "Oh my goodness, Ethany, it's been too long. I need to know what you've been up to." When she called me by that pet name, I was upset, but Ethan handled it so nicely. "Isabella, it's nice to see you. I've had a terrific time with Sophie. What say you? Continue to work for your father's business?" Isabella's smile wavered briefly. "Yes, you are familiar with me. I prefer having alternatives available to me. I'm not bound, in contrast to certain individuals." This was how the conversation went on for what seemed like hours, with Isabella gushing over Ethan and sparing me with veiled digs. Even though I tried my hardest to remain composed, I was worn out by the end of the evening. I noticed Isabella was showing up at our social gatherings more often in the weeks that followed that initial encounter. She always seemed to go above and above to make me feel uneasy and out of place. We were at a dinner party one Friday night, given by one of Ethan's business partners. Isabella strolled up with a champagne flute in hand as I was having a conversation with a few of the spouses. "Oh, Sophie," she said in a sickly sweet voice, "what an intriguing ensemble that is. I had no idea that the librarian aesthetic was making a comeback." Suddenly self-conscious, I looked down at my knee-length skirt and top. Trying not to laugh, I said, "I think it's appropriate for a dinner party," in response. With a sound like tinkling glass, Isabella laughed. "You do, my dear, of course. Not everyone is as adept at wearing high couture as I am." I bit my lip to keep from criticizing her attire for looking more like something you'd see at a nightclub rather than a dinner gathering. Rather, I excused myself and go in search of Ethan. Week by week, Isabella's actions got more audacious. She began sharing pictures from our get-togethers on social media, making sure to always exclude or obscure my face. The captions were blatant comments regarding my demeanor or style of living. One day, I was going through my feed when I saw a rather offensive post. Isabella had posted an ugly photograph of me next to a picture of herself. "Who do you think is a better match for Ethan?" was the caption. "Comment with your vote." The majority of the comments were supportive of Isabella, and as I went through them, I felt my cheeks flame with rage and embarrassment. She had written, "Seems like the people have spoken," at the bottom of the post. Plain Jane is more attractive than I am, so Ethan must be a total moron. When Ethan arrived home from work that evening, I made the decision to speak with him about the circumstance. As Ethan entered the room, I remarked, "Ethan, we need to talk about Isabella." With a groan, he undid his necktie. "What's she done now?" Using my phone, I showed him the post. His expression grew serious as he paged through it. His words were hardly audible. "This is unacceptable. I'll speak with her. Tell her to remove it." I said, "That's not enough," in a rather trembling voice. "Please advise her to avoid coming near us. I no longer want her to attend our events." Feeling uneasy, Ethan ran a hand through his hair. "I can't do that, Sophie. She is a significant business partner's daughter. I'm not able to just bar her from social gatherings." "So what, I'm just supposed to put up with her bullying me?" My voice rising, I asked. Ethan hugged me and replied, "Of course not. Look, I'll speak with her and let her know that this conduct is unacceptable. But you have to realize that I can't ignore her totally without jeopardizing my business ties." I started to become frustrated and moved away from him. "And Ethan, how about our relationship? Does that not matter?" "Obviously it does," he remarked, appearing wounded. "You are aware that you are my sole love. Isabella has passed away. Remember that I choose you." Even though his remarks were supposed to reassure me, I couldn't get rid of the impression that our troubles weren't over yet. That night, as I was going to bed, I couldn't help but wonder whether our idyllic existence was beginning to fall apart. Weeks went by, and Isabella's actions became more and more blatant. She appeared to make it her goal to get under my skin and closer to Ethan at every event or party. We attended a cocktail party one evening that stands out in particular that one of Ethan's co-workers held. Feeling secure and at ease, I had picked out an attractive black dress that was basic yet classy for the event. That sensation passed quickly. Isabella strode into the room, her skin-tight red dress leaving little room for interpretation. Her gaze instantly fell on Ethan, and she headed straight toward us. Her words, "Ethan, darling," were spoken without acknowledging my existence. "You look absolutely dashing tonight." Before any of us could reply, she put her hand on Ethan's arm and gave it a kind pat. "Care to dance with me for old time's sake?" Though my blood started to boil, Ethan managed to free himself from her hold with ease. "Thank you, Isabella, but my wife and I are here. Perhaps at a later date." There was a little rush of victory that I couldn't help but feel as we left. I observed Isabella's continuous attempts to get Ethan alone throughout the evening. She would give him a call to talk business or to beg for assistance with some made-up issue. To Ethan's credit, he turned down her approaches each time, making sure to include me in the conversation or come back to my side right away. However, the unceasing attention was becoming taxing for us both. Not the respite that was hoped for throughout the next 2 weeks. Isabella started making more regular and noticeable attempts to sabotage our relationship. On Ethan's social media, she would make thought-provoking posts that often brought up their shared past. She used to talk loudly at gatherings about how much they had loved one another, making sure to leave me out of the conversation. But the actual blow-up happened at our friend Tom's birthday celebration. Isabella came, ostentatiously late, in a dress that seemed more fitting for a red carpet event than a backyard cookout. She grinned as she came in, making eye contact with me. She shouted out, "Oh, Sophie," her voice brimming with insincere worry. "You miserable creature. Have you missed the memo? This isn't a gathering of the library book club." The crowd erupted in laughter, and I felt the blushes on my cheeks burn. Ethan hurried over from his conversation with other coworkers to stand at my side. "That's enough, Isabella," he replied in a low, furious tone. "You need to stop this childish behavior." Isabella's pretend innocent eyes widened. "Ethan, why?" "Merely attempting to assist. Your small bride has to be shown how to dress for these occasions by someone." I felt something damp and chilly slip through my garments before Ethan could answer. I was shocked to find crimson wine smearing across the front of my dress as I looked down. Isabella was standing in front of me with an empty glass in her hand and a look of mild regret on her face. "Oh no," she said. "How foolish of me. However, that stain is much better than that awful dress. To be honest." The gathering quieted down, focusing on us. Standing there with wine streaming off my clothing, I felt angry and ashamed. However, everything inside me exploded as I saw Isabella's arrogant expression. "You know what, Isabella?" With a clear and firm voice, I spoke. "I'd rather wear this soiled dress than waste any more time acting politely toward you. You are acting in a pitiful and shameful manner. If you'll excuse me, my husband and I are leaving." Ethan was gazing at Isabella with a mix of disbelief and disdain when I turned to face him. I said, "Let's head home." Isabella's high-pitched voice could be heard behind us as we made our way to the exit. "Ethan, my love, please stay. I'll take good care of you if you stay." Ethan did not even look back. He wrapped his arm around me and declared, "My wife is the only person I want to take care of me," loud enough for everyone to hear. "Isabella, goodbye." I couldn't help but sense that a boundary had been crossed as we silently drove home. Now that Isabella had revealed her true nature, there was no turning back. Ethan entered our bedroom one bright morning with a sullen attitude. He said, "Sophie, I have to go on a business trip. It is crucial for the business. I'll be away for around a week." I tried to ignore the little knot in my gut as I nodded. "All right. When are you going to depart?" "Tomorrow morning," he answered. I apologized for the brief notice. It sprang out of nowhere. I feigned a laugh. "It's all right. I'm aware of how significant your business is." When Ethan departed for his vacation the following day, I was left alone in our home. I was so mired in work that I didn't notice the empty house as the week went by slowly. My phone started ringing on Friday night. I was shocked to see it was Isabella. She said, "Sophie, darling," in a voice that was sickeningly lovely. "Tonight, I'm planning a little gathering. Merely a cluster of 8 people. Ethan and you should come, please." I wavered. Ethan's out of town on business, actually." Isabella said, "Oh, what a shame," without even quite seeming unhappy. "Yet you ought to still attend. We'll have a terrific opportunity to get past our differences and start over. How would you respond?" Although my gut told me to say no, I couldn't help but be intrigued. "I'm not sure," I nervously said. "Oh, please," Isabella insisted. "It's located at El Chateau. You do realize where this is? Extremely exclusive. I swear, it will be enjoyable." I could feel my lips curling into a grin at the name of El Chateau. I quickly answered, "All right, after considering my options. I'll be there." "What time?" inquired Isabella. 8 o'clock, I stated. "Don't be late." Exactly 8 in the evening, I entered El Chateau. I noticed Ethan and 8 of his buddies, including Isabella, seated around a table in a happy group. I had a fleeting hope that things would work out, but my heart fell as I got closer. There was no spot at the table reserved for me. With a glare in her eyes, Isabella got to her feet. "Oh, Sophie," she said, sounding phony yet worried all at same. "I fear there's been miscommunication. Look, we're packed up here. Not enough space for extras." She turned around, flaunting her high-end gown. "Sophie, this is a place where people belong. Lovely people, prosperous people. The diner across the street could be worth a try. They make mean hot dogs, I've heard." There was a sudden silence at the table, with everyone appearing uneasy, but saying nothing. I chuckled, taking great pleasure in Isabella's pitiful attempt at embarrassment. "Excuse me, could I speak to the restaurant manager, please?" I yelled as I turned around. The restaurant manager came over to our table with a kind and professional manner. His gaze shifted between Isabella and me as he said, "Is there a problem here?" I gave the manager a grin before Isabella could say anything. "There is absolutely no issue. I simply wanted to know whether I could come to supper with this beautiful company." The manager gave me a warm grin. "Obviously, ma'am. I'll go grab you a cozy chair right now." Isabella's face twisted with wrath as he raced off. "Pardon me. This table is reserved for 8 people by me. There isn't place for her here, and she wasn't invited." The manager reappeared and set down a soft chair at the table. Madam has the right to sit at any table she chooses. I regret for any misunderstanding this may have caused. After all, she is El Chateau's owner. Around the table, there was a collective gasp. Ethan's pals stared at me in shock as Isabella's mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. Tom was the one who spoke first. "However, Sophie, I mistook you for an accountant. That's how Ethan first got to know you." I shrugged my shoulders shyly and smiled. "My profession is accounting. I handle the restaurant's bookkeeping. I've never been one to flaunt their money. I think it's better to assess people based on their morals rather than their wealth." Isabella's cheeks flushed a dark scarlet, a mixture of shame and rage. There was a sharp change in the atmosphere around the table. Having remained mute throughout Isabella's outburst, Ethan's buddies suddenly jumped at the chance to offer me to hang out with them. "Please have Sophie sit with us. We would adore learning more about your eatery. It's unbelievable that we were unaware of this about you." I smiled softly and raised a hand. "I appreciate the invitation, but I believe I will turn it down. All I wanted to do was pop over and say hi." I faced the manager. "Please see to it that my husband's friends are well looked after. Tonight, I'm footing the cost." I couldn't resist adding, "And Isabella, there's a lovely diner down the street," as I was about to leave. "They make mean hot dogs, I've heard. Perhaps you should give it a try sometime." I left the restaurant after that, leaving Isabella completely embarrassed and in shock. I informed Ethan about the event over dinner a few days after he got back from his work trip. "Ethan, you ought to have seen her face," I chuckled. "I don't think I've ever seen anyone turn that shade of red." Ethan laughed and shook his head. "It's unbelievable that she believes she could make you feel that uncomfortable. Sophie, you handled it flawlessly." I had a wave of contentment as we were finishing our supper. Isabella's plan to make me look bad had failed miserably, and in the process it had strengthened our bond. The weeks that followed the event at El Chateau passed quickly. Life had become comfortable again, and the story of Isabella's humiliation had become just one of those funny dinnertime stories that Ethan and I would sometimes tell one another. While sorting through my emails one cool autumn morning, I came upon a curious note, an offer to take part in the Esteemed Entrepreneur of the Year award program, more precisely, the Successful Entrepreneurial Debut category, was received. Reading the descriptions made my heart skip a beat. This was a noteworthy acknowledgement of my efforts and accomplishments with the business. We chose to go to the function as a group. We looked our best the evening of the awards. Ethan looked stunning in his tux, and I went with a classy yet modest dress that gave me a strong, certain feeling. There were many of the most prominent and successful people in the city at this magnificent location. As we socialized, I recognized a lot of faces, friends, acquaintances, and a few of Ethan's business partners. The air was charged with excitement and expectation. Ethan left me near the champagne fountain at one point so he could have a conversation with some co-workers. A familiar voice screamed in my ear as I was taking in the elaborate ice sculpture. "What are you doing here?" I turned to see Isabella looking at me, a mix of bewilderment and rage on her face. "I was invited," I said coolly, holding out my invitation to her. Isabella's gaze grew strained. "Ours is an occasion for the prosperous and accomplished citizens of our city, people much like my father and me. It's not where you belong, you prick. You try to smuggle yourself into our world. Before you cause yourself embarrassment, leave." I kept my cool and scanned the room until I saw the person I was searching for. Grinning, I gestured to two dapper-looking elderly guys chatting away across the room in their immaculate suits. Isabella's diatribe persisted as they got closer, but I ignored her and concentrated on the men. I gave one of them a nice embrace when they got to us. I gave him a cheek kiss and said, "Dad, I'm so glad you could make it." I turned to face the other man and held out my hand, which he shook kindly. "Mr. Thompson, it's wonderful to see you again." When Isabella recognized the identity of the second man, her mouth fell open. Her voice harsh with astonishment, she turned to face him. "Hey, Dad, what are you up to?" "With this nobody, how can you possibly be friendly?" All she is an accountant playing at being one of us because she got lucky. Her place in our world is not here." As he listened to his daughter's scream, Mr. Thompson's face became deeply crimson. His normally cool, calculating eyes were suddenly blazing with rage. Isabella flinched as he bellowed, "Silence." He made an indication to my dad. "This is William Carter, a highly successful businessman in the nation and a valuable business associate of mine. Your naive remarks have the potential to ruin a multi-million-dollar agreement." As her eyes became wide with amazement, Isabella did not back away. On the contrary, she doubled down. "Then, Daddy, back out of the transaction. Her family is not someone we have to do business with. They are not worthy of us." Anger mottled Mr. Thompson's face, causing crimson patches to form on his forehead and cheeks. Heads turned around the ballroom as his voice reached a yell. "Enough now. Your actions are unacceptable." He gave Isabella a quick finger poke. "You're disconnected as of right now. Consider yourself evicted. No more credit cards, no more allowance, and that opulent apartment of yours." With a tone of urgent apology, Isabella's mouth fell wide in shock as her father turned to face us. "Mr. Carter, Sophie, please accept my deepest apologies for this disgraceful scene." He snapped at Isabella and turned back to face his daughter. "Go now. You have shown that you are not deserving of being here." With a mixture of worry and rage on his face, Ethan charged through the group of people gathering around us at that very moment. He insisted, "What's going on here?" He saw Isabella and shook his head in contempt before anybody could reply. "I ought to have been aware. Isabella, I can now clearly recall why I ended our relationship. You have never been taught how to act appropriately in public." Isabella eventually lost her cool. Her cheeks started to well up with tears, trailing mascara everywhere they went. She cried, "Daddy, please," and reached for Mr. Thompson's arm. "I apologize. I was ignorant. Don't do this, please." Mr. Thompson, nevertheless, brushed her hand aside. "I have business to discuss with my partners." He turned away from her and stated in a chilly manner, "Goodbye, Isabella." Isabella stood by alone in the center of the floor, mascara running down her cheeks and her shoulders trembling from tears as Mr. Thompson and my father left. The group surrounding us gradually thinned out, leaving her alone with her embarrassment. The remainder of the evening seemed to fly by. I remember being very stunned when my name was mentioned for the successful entrepreneurial debut category at the awards event. I saw Ethan and my father in the audience as I got the medal. With a proud smile on their faces, they stood up and began to clap enthusiastically. Their excitement was contagious, and I experienced a wave of happiness and achievement. The weeks after the awards ceremony saw life settling into a comfortable new routine. The golden figurine became a discreet memento of that memorable evening and was placed on our mantelpiece. Ethan and I kept going to parties with his business partners and friends. These parties became much more pleasurable without Isabella's poisonous presence. There was more real talk, a lighter environment, and more regular laughter. One evening, when I was putting on my earrings, Ethan approached me from behind as we prepared for yet another social gathering. He put his arms around my waist and remarked, "You know, I've noticed how much more fun these parties have become lately." I gave him a grin in the mirror. I had the exact same thought just now. It's incredible how the absence of one person can alter the dynamics completely. Ethan gave a contemplative look as he nodded. "Speaking of absence, have you heard anything about Isabella lately?" I gave a head shake. "Not really. She seemed to have entirely disappeared. But, well, during the previous party, I heard Tom chatting to his wife. There's a story circulating that Mr. Thompson moved Isabella to a different state because he didn't want her to cause him or the family company any more shame." Ethan's eyebrow shot up. "Whoa, it is rather pronounced. But given her actions during the awards ceremony, I can't say I'm shocked." I looked up at him and straightened his tie. "It's extremely unfortunate. She was never taught to value or exercise her status sensibly." I thought about how much my life had changed in the last year as we traveled to the celebration. It had been an intense ride, filled with everything from the difficulties I had with Isabella to the surprise acknowledgement of my financial ability. Nevertheless, my bond with Ethan had only gotten stronger throughout it all. Regarding Isabella, I sincerely hoped that she would finally find her path. Everyone deserves the opportunity to develop and become a better version of themselves. After all, who knew? Perhaps a new beginning in a different state would be just what she needed. I was happy to be in this moment, though, for the time being, swaying in my husband's arms, surrounded by friends, and appreciative of the life we had created together.
As I overhear the conversation, I glance over at my daughter-in-law, Cheryl, who seems completely stunned. Cheryl looks panicked, clutching an apple, her eyes darting between my husband and son as they continue their discussion. I can feel my anger starting to rise. My husband and son wrap up the conversation, making their point clear to Cheryl. When I lock eyes with her, she's trembling, and the apple slips from her hand. Ignoring her distress, I ask firmly, "Could you call them back?" Cheryl, on the verge of tears, dials my husband again. As I listen to the annoyed voices of my husband and son on the other end, I wonder what I should do next. My name is Raina, and I'm 62 years old. I've been managing household chores since I graduated from high school. I met my husband, Oliver, through a family introduction, and we married soon after. We had our son and lived happily. No matter how busy he was, my husband always made time to attend our son Miguel's school events. Miguel was such a sweet child. Even when I was too ill to do housework, he would do his best to help. "How are you feeling? Can you eat some chicken soup?" he'd ask, his little face full of concern. I had to smile when my husband cautiously brought over a pot of soup one evening, having made it himself after putting our son to bed. Seeing me laugh, my husband joined in, albeit awkwardly. Ever since our son got married, he no longer helps with household chores. But he's good to his wife Cheryl, so I suppose it's okay. Still, sometimes when I'm not feeling well, I find myself craving my husband's chicken soup. I'll never forget the taste of that soup. Lately, I haven't been feeling well. It's probably due to my age, but I've had constant discomfort in my stomach and haven't had much of an appetite. Nowadays, since we're living with my son and his wife, Cheryl handles the cooking and dishwashing while I manage the rest of the household chores. I can't complain since I'm relieved from most of the cumbersome tasks, but recently, I've been feeling feverish and usually lie down on the sofa after finishing the laundry. Just then, my husband walked into the living room. Feeling sluggish, I couldn't get up, so I watched him carefully. Ignoring me, he walked past the sofa, went to the kitchen table, and started making coffee. The strong aroma of freshly brewed coffee made me cough involuntarily. Hearing that, my husband clicked his tongue softly and hurried out of the living room once his coffee was ready. It's sad, but lately he's been so cold towards me, like I'm a burden to him. I can't pinpoint when things started going wrong, but somewhere along the line, this is what we've become. Thinking of how caring he used to be made tears well up in my eyes, and I gently wiped them away with my sleeve. Tonight's dinner is meatloaf, but given my poor health, I opted for chicken soup. I'm fully aware of the hassle it takes to prepare a separate meal for one person, but lately I can't stomach the same food as everyone else. Yet Cheryl, my son's wife, made me chicken soup without a hint of complaint. What a blessing she is to our family. "Mom, chicken soup again?" Cheryl's gone through the trouble to make a nice dinner. "Isn't it rude not to eat it?" Miguel said, his tone slightly accusatory. "Don't say that, Miguel. I'm sure Raina feels bad enough as it is," Cheryl interjected with a chuckle. I smiled weakly and let her comment slide. Though Cheryl can be blunt at times, she's an excellent cook and very considerate. Today's chicken soup was clearly made with my health in mind. She even added a touch of citrus zest to stimulate my dwindling appetite. As everyone else happily chatted and dug into their meatloaf, I sipped my chicken soup. Suddenly, I paused. The soup tasted strange, almost chemical. At first, I thought it was the wax from the citrus zest, but even after avoiding it, the taste persisted. I couldn't help but furrow my brows, catching my husband's attention, who responded with a stern look. Despite feeling guilty towards Cheryl, something was definitely off. I left most of my plate untouched, and Cheryl noticed. With concern in her voice, she asked, "Didn't it taste good?" Feeling cornered, I lied, saying I wasn't feeling well, and let the moment pass. But deep down, I wondered, What did I do wrong? Days passed, and I began to feel a bit better. Since Cheryl and my son had plans to go out, it was my turn to cook. Eager to finally get out of the house, I decided to go shopping, but my body still felt sluggish, likely from being bedridden due to my recent illness. Thinking it was just a lack of exercise, I chose to walk to the nearby supermarket. While waiting for the traffic light to change, a sudden chill ran through my body and my vision went dark. Instinctively, I squatted down, but soon found myself sweating profusely, unable to move. Passers-by glanced at me curiously as they walked by, but I couldn't get up. I clutched my collar tightly, hearing the distant commotion of people and an approaching ambulance siren until I eventually lost consciousness. When I regained it, I found myself staring at a white ceiling. I was in a hospital room. Apparently, I had collapsed on the way to the store and had been brought in by an ambulance. "Oh, Raina, you're awake." I turned toward the voice and saw Cheryl standing by my bed. I tried to respond, but my body wouldn't cooperate. For a moment, I was overwhelmed with gratitude for Cheryl, who showed no signs of annoyance. But as I looked up to thank her, something about Cheryl's face seemed different, something I couldn't pinpoint, but it scared me. Cheryl didn't notice my discomfort. She took an apple from the fruit basket she had probably brought for me. "Raina, you haven't been eating well lately. It's probably malnutrition. Eat this and get better soon," she said, peeling the apple with a fruit knife. Suddenly, a phone rang. I wondered whose it was for a moment, then realized it was Cheryl's. I knew I shouldn't, but I glanced at the screen. My husband's name was displayed. "Cheryl, your phone's ringing," I said. "Oh yes. Can you put it on speaker?" "My hands are full," she replied, hesitating for a second, but then quickly continuing to peel the apple. Doing as she asked, I answered the phone and pressed the speaker button. "How is she?" My husband's voice came through the speaker. "She just woke up. I'm peeling an apple for her right now," Cheryl responded. "You're conscious again. What stamina you have. What's going on? You're awake already?" My husband continued. From the start, the conversation felt off. Not quite what I expected from people who were supposedly worried about me. My husband and son's words made me uneasy. "Didn't expect her to wake up this soon. Did we mess up somehow?" my husband asked. "Hey Cheryl, you've been skimping on the detergent lately, haven't you? Should we add a bit more detergent?" my son chimed in. What on earth are they talking about? I looked over at Cheryl. She was holding the apple, her face pale and trembling. Seeing her expression, it suddenly clicked for me. They've been adding detergent to my meals. Cheryl had been watching my expression change, and finally she dropped the apple she was holding. Meanwhile, the conversation between my husband and son continued unabated. "Even if we fix the detergent ratio, maybe just mixing it into the food isn't enough," my son said. "Yeah, I'd like that insurance money sooner rather than later. Maybe we should mix it into her drinks next time." "It's amazing she hasn't noticed," my husband added. "She won't notice. This is someone who doesn't even realize she's despised." My son laughed heartily. As I ended the call, I clenched the bedsheets, biting my lip. How did things turn so dark? Why must I suffer this way at the hands of my husband, son, and even my daughter-in-law? What did I do to deserve this? There were no answers, no matter how much I thought about it. I shot Cheryl a fierce glare. She was trembling, probably never expecting their plot would be revealed like this. Cheryl began to panic, fidgeting with her hands. Seizing the moment, I quickly pulled my cell phone from my bag, opened the recording app, and said, "Call them again." "What?" "Call my husband again." Cheryl stammered, overwhelmed by the urgency in my voice. "Now," I insisted, and reluctantly, Cheryl dialed the number. After a few rings, the call connected. "What's up, Cheryl? Did she finally kick the bucket?" My husband sneered on the other end. I could hear my son casually talking in the background, adding, "Don't worry, we'll split Mom's insurance money evenly. Actually, you'll get a bit more for all your trouble. Yeah, adding detergent to her meals is no small feat. You deserve it." They both laughed heartily before hanging up. I stopped the recording and glared at Cheryl. Realizing she was cornered, she weakly lowered her arms and looked up at the ceiling, accepting her fate. I grabbed Cheryl by the shoulders and pressed her for answers. With nowhere to turn, she finally broke down and confessed everything. She revealed that my husband and son had become addicted to gambling, often going out together, but their constant losses led them into deep debt. Desperate, they concocted a plan to take out a life insurance policy on me without my knowledge, hoping to collect the payout. This sinister plan had been in motion for 2 years. They realized the quickest way to ensure an insurance payout was if I became ill. So they devised a scheme to slowly poison me by mixing detergent into my food. Cheryl explained that around 2 years ago, she suddenly took over meal preparation. At first, I offered to help, but Cheryl strongly refused, insisting on doing it all herself. Now I understood why. If I had been involved in preparing the meals, it would have been difficult to slip detergent into my food without being caught, which would have ruined their entire plan. Cheryl then dropped another bombshell. The masterminds behind this plot were Oliver and Miguel. They had assured her the plan would work. Hearing this, I couldn't just sit there. Pretending I needed to use the bathroom, I quietly slipped out of the hospital. Initially, I thought about going home to confront my husband and son, but that wouldn't be enough to satisfy me. I decided on a different course of action. I immediately sought out a lawyer after leaving the hospital. Fortunately, it didn't take long to find a law office. I quickly went in and explained my situation. At first, the lawyer was skeptical, but after I played the recording from earlier, his expression changed dramatically. He advised me to contact the police, but I told him there was something else I wanted to do first. We proceeded with the necessary paperwork, and with everything in place except for what I needed from my husband, I set out again, this time with my lawyer. Our next destination was the police station. I began by explaining the whole situation. The police were just as skeptical as the lawyer had been. But as soon as I provided the recording and the lawyer's explanations, they swung into action. Shortly after, a female officer accompanied me back to the hospital, while the lawyer headed to my house with the police. Upon returning to the hospital, Cheryl was still there. The police immediately took her into custody. I felt a brief sense of relief without Cheryl around, but I couldn't fully relax, worried that my husband and son might burst into the hospital room at any moment. I went through cycles of lying down and getting up from the bed, unable to find peace. Eventually, a nurse came to check on me. I had to explain everything, but the conversation distracted me a bit. The nurse was shocked by my story and seemed utterly speechless. She remembered the policewoman and Cheryl leaving earlier, and then went back to the nurse's station to process my admission for the day. I can't say how much time had passed, but eventually, a different pair of police officers arrived in my hospital room. Worried that my husband and son had escaped, I anxiously listened to their update, fighting back tears. To my surprise, they informed me that my husband, son, and Cheryl had all been safely arrested. When the police initially entered my home, neither my husband nor my son was present, leading them to suspect they had fled. But in reality, they were just out gambling and were arrested after being questioned by police patrolling the area. I couldn't believe their nerve, gambling while I was being rushed to the hospital. Though they had wished for my health to deteriorate, they should have known I was waking up. Their casual attitude infuriated me, but in the end, their recklessness led to their swift arrest. So I guess there's no use complaining now. Ultimately, my husband, son, and Cheryl were charged with attempted murder. On top of that, my husband was served divorce papers through my lawyer. At first, he opposed the divorce, but after hearing the sum of the damages he owed, he agreed to all my conditions, including transferring the house into my name in exchange for a lower settlement. As for my son and Cheryl, well, with my son in jail, I seized the opportunity to sever all family ties through a legal affidavit. No more financial support, period. Even if he's released, I'll treat him like a complete stranger. As for Cheryl, I informed her parents about everything. Initially, they didn't believe me, but by the time I finished my story, they were visibly shaken and sincerely apologized. Unexpectedly, Cheryl's mother left the room and returned with a thick envelope. Inside was $50,000. I stood there in disbelief as they continued to apologize profusely. It seemed like they intended this as compensation. I tried to decline several times, but they insisted, almost in tears, that I accept it. So I finally did. Time passed, and I found myself in good spirits again. The spacious house, now devoid of people, allowed me to live my life without compromise. And yes, I could finally eat whatever I liked without worrying. Since that incident, I think I've become a bit of a germaphobe. When doing the dishes, I minimize the use of soap. I still think it's a waste of water, but I make sure to thoroughly rinse off any soap. It's not just for dishes. I extend this habit to showering and laundry too. If I don't, I hesitate to even put things in my mouth or on my body. While my husband, son, and Cheryl are certainly to blame for this change, I think I'll gradually get better because they're no longer in my house. I have the freedom to live as I please. Some may think I'm emotionally scared, but from my perspective, I feel utterly relieved and refreshed. I switched to a new cell phone. The incriminating voice recordings have been turned over to the police, and honestly, just keeping that phone would have felt disgusting. As I think about the freedom my new phone represents, I'm motivated to try things I've never dared before. Maybe I'll get into the trending world of cooking live streams. My husband had always dreamed of making it big as a rock musician. Meanwhile, I was managing our living expenses and funding his promotional activities. I even covered $3,000 a month for his father's caregiving costs at his request. Despite all this, there was no sign of him succeeding, and worse, he began slacking off on his music career. Whenever I tried to discuss it with him, he became defensive, insisting that I should just listen to whatever he said. It became increasingly difficult to continue living like this. I decided to at least ask my mother-in-law if she could help with the caregiving expenses. But then 10 years ago, my husband passed away. Right after his death, I discovered his betrayal, which left me devastated. My name is Sadi, and I'm 37 years old. I work for an event company handling a variety of clients. 2 years ago, I married Keith, who is 10 years younger than me. My friends were concerned when I shared the news of our marriage, mostly because of the age difference. I understood their worries, but I was determined to marry him. We're currently living together in an apartment, though we haven't been able to have children yet. When we were dating, everything seemed perfect. We never had big fights and got along so well that I believed our married life would be smooth sailing. Unfortunately, I was in for a rude awakening. Keith was a member of an indie rock band, mostly performing at local venues and regional music festivals. He was dedicated to his music and worked hard to become famous, but he couldn't make a living from the band alone. So he juggled multiple part-time jobs. We met when I volunteered at one of his shows. His passion for music was so inspiring that I felt compelled to support him. Initially, I was cautious because of the age difference and intended to keep things professional. But while managing his band, Keith started making advances towards me. At first, I thought he was joking, but he was serious and openly expressed his feelings. "Sadi, I really like you. Why don't you give me a chance?" I was taken aback by his direct approach. "You're kidding, right? I'm 10 years older than you. Someone like you could easily find a young, pretty girl," I responded. Keith was a wild-looking, handsome guy with a lot of female fans, while I was more of a plain Jane, focused on my work, and had missed the typical age for finding a husband. Not that I was eager to get married anyway, I preferred work over romance. Plus, my older brother has 3 kids, so my parents never pressured me to settle down. I couldn't believe that someone like Keith would have feelings for me, but he persisted. "I don't care about fans who are only interested in my appearance. I prefer mature women like you, who respect and support my dreams and are capable at work. Marry me," he said. His earnestness won me over, and I began to see him as a potential partner. After dating for a while and giving it serious thought, I decided to marry him. I was determined to support his dreams. We didn't have enough money for a wedding, so we had a simple ceremony at the city hall. After that, Keith moved into my apartment and we started our life together. My parents lived on the opposite side of the country, and we couldn't afford to visit them. We planned to visit each other's families once we were more financially stable. But shortly after our wedding, Keith wanted to discuss something with me. My dad was paralyzed in an accident a while back, and he needs constant care. Unfortunately, I can't go back often, and my mom is getting old and can't move around much either. "Oh no, that sounds really tough," I said, feeling concerned. "Is there something I can do to help?" Keith looked at me hesitantly. "Yeah, actually, his care costs $3,000 a month. I've been cutting corners to make ends meet, but I'm reaching my limit. I'm really sorry, but honey, could you pitch in a $3,000 each month?" I was taken aback by his request. My take-home salary was only about $3,000, and Keith made around $1,500. If I sent my entire salary each month, we barely have enough left for rent. Sensing my hesitation, he suddenly grabbed my hand. "Honey, I'm really counting on you. My parents have been supporting my dream for so long, and doing nothing about this wouldn't sit right with me. I'll work hard to become famous, I promise. Please?" At his desperate plea, I decided to tough it out. All right, but if it comes out of my income, we won't be able to sustain ourselves. So for now, I'll use my savings. You've got to pay it back sometime though. Thanks, love. I'll definitely pay it back. Heck, if I make it big, I'll spoil you rotten. Just to be safe, I made him sign a promissory note. Even though we were married, I thought it would be better to handle these things properly. Paying $3,000 a month hurt, but I tried to remind myself that it was for a good cause. I just hoped his band would become famous soon. Unfortunately, things didn't go as I'd hoped. 2 years later, there was still no progress. Not only that, but Keith had stopped promoting his band altogether. They didn't even get together to practice anymore. He spent most of his time lounging at home or using the pocket money I gave him to go out. At first, I thought he might have given up on his dream. If you're not continuing with music, you need to find another job, I told him one day. When I asked if he had given up, he insisted he was still pursuing his music career. But despite his words, there was no sign of him restarting band activities. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and confronted him. Hey, can't you just get back into playing shows already? Or at least try some part-time jobs, even short-term? It could be a fresh start, you know. Yeah, maybe when I'm in the mood, he replied casually. You said that last time, but you've just been chilling without working. If you keep going like this, we're going to be in serious trouble. Just earn a little something for God's sake. His nonchalant attitude ticked me off, and I unintentionally raised my voice. He glared at me and got defensive. Shut up. Don't you dare complain about men's work. I'm just taking a break because I'm in a slump. I'll get back to it when the time is right. I was stunned by his sudden outburst. He had never been so nasty to me since we got married. But his lack of work was seriously messing up our finances. My savings were dwindling because of the monthly caregiving expense for my father-in-law. Our life was on the brink of falling apart. I tried discussing the possibility of reducing the amount I sent each month. We're barely afloat, Keith. We can't sustain our life on just my income. Cut down the amount? That'll make my dad suffer and make life harder for my mom. Are you planning to abandon my parents? It's not like that at all, but we're running out of money. We have to make some changes. Figuring that out is your job as my wife, he snapped. Reducing the amount is absolutely out of the question. If there's not enough money, go get a part-time job or something. He furiously stormed back to his room after that argument, leaving me at a loss about how to deal with his absurd demands. Unfortunately, his troublesome behavior didn't end there. Lately, he's been going out with friends and coming back extremely late. It's not uncommon for him to return in the dead of night, or sometimes he doesn't even contact me and just shows up in the morning. When he does return home, he reeks of alcohol and perfume. When I asked him where he'd been, he casually said he was just out playing around and drinking at bars. Okay, if it's just you drinking too much, I can understand the alcohol smell, I told him. But what's with the strong scent of perfume? I asked him to at least let me know where he was going, but he refused to listen. Don't complain about my hangouts with my buddies. I just happened to get that perfume smell at the bar. Don't go jumping to conclusions, he snapped. However, his eyes were darting all over the place, and he was sweating, so it was crystal clear he was lying. He used to be sweet when we first got married, but now there wasn't a trace of that left. In fact, I felt like he was treating me more like a cash cow than anything else. Divorce began to cross my mind, but there was also the matter of the caregiving fees I'd been paying. I still had the promissory note, but I wasn't sure if I'd be able to get that money back after the divorce. With no other option, I decided to consult with my in-laws. While Keith was away, I made up my mind to call them. When I cleaned his room, I found an old-school notebook with phone numbers written in it. Something about it made a strong impression on me. While he was out, I went into his room and dialed one of the numbers written in the notebook. A woman's voice answered. Hello, who is this? Oh, hi, this is Sadie. You don't know me. Is this Mrs. Florence, Keith's mother? Yes, she replied, sounding surprised. I explained to her that I was his wife. She was shocked because she hadn't heard from him in years. I never thought he could get married, she said. He's lazy and always talked about becoming a rock star. I'm really sorry for the delayed update, I said, feeling guilty. He was earnest in pursuing me, and well, I'm quite a bit older than him. I blurted that out as if making an excuse. Then, I brought up the issue of caregiving expenses. He asked me to pay $3,000 each month for his father's care. but because he's not working, my savings are about to run out. Is it okay to reduce the amount? There was dead silence on the other end of the line. Then, before I could sense what was coming, she dropped a bombshell on me. My husband, he passed away 10 years ago. Keith has been estranged from the family for years, and we haven't been in touch. What? I stammered. His father is gone, and he's been estranged? I'm sorry, could you please explain a bit more? As we talked, one shocking truth after another came to light. I realized I had been deceived by him all this time. My entire body trembled with rage. All the effort I had put into supporting his dream had been for nothing. I would not let him get away with this. I was determined to make him pay for what he'd done. A few days after my call with my mother-in-law, Keith was out late again. Normally, I would have been worried about where he'd been, but now I felt relieved because I wasn't interrupted in my preparations. When he finally returned, just as I finished my task, he widened his eyes as he looked around the room. Then he started yelling at me. Hey, what the heck are you doing? Don't touch my stuff without permission. I stared at him coldly. You need to get out of this apartment and we're getting a divorce. You'll be hearing from my lawyer soon. What the heck? You can't just say that out of the blue. What do you think you're doing? He shouted. I know exactly what I'm doing, but do you? What have you done with the $3,000 I've been paying every month for your dad's care, which you lied about? He froze at my question, so I continued without giving him a chance to speak. I contacted your mom. She told me about your dad's passing and how you've been estranged from the family for years because of repeated misdemeanors like shoplifting. His face turned pale, and he desperately tried to come up with an excuse. No, it's not like that at all. I was buying band equipment. It was pricey, so I was hesitant to tell you. It's for work, so it's fine, right? I was disgusted by his pathetic excuse. Even if that were true, the fact remained that he lied and deceitfully took money from me each month, and especially because it was all built on lies. There was no way I could forgive him. I'm not up for vague excuses. You used the money I gave you on your affairs, right? I've got proof, and it's all been checked. His notebook had listed a bunch of women's phone numbers, and when I called them, 5 of them confirmed they were romantically involved with him. They had all been lied to about him being single. When I confronted him with this, his face turned red as a beet, and he became enraged. He even tried to attack me, but at that moment, a sharp scream came from the back room. Enough! Out poured a bunch of women, his mistresses, all of whom I had gathered. The color drained from his face as he went from red to white in a second. They looked ready to unleash hell, especially since some of them had been seriously considering marriage. They pounced on him, shouting, "You jerk," and "You scumbag," as they towered over the cowering Keith. Outnumbered and fueled by anger, they were a force to be reckoned with. Amid the chaos, Keith was grappling and crying out, "Please stop. I messed up, I'm sorry." Once they had enough of him, each of them spat out, "I'll never forgive you," and were done, before storming out one by one. He was left in a sorry state, completely stunned. I laid it on even thicker. Just so you know, I'm demanding alimony for the infidelity, and you're paying back the $70,000 I've paid in caregiving expenses. I've got the paperwork, so there's no running away. He suddenly looked at me and begged on his knees. Please, honey, don't divorce me. I'll pay back the money over time, and I'll change my ways and work seriously. Please, don't leave me. His pleas fell on deaf ears. At this point, I felt nothing but annoyance. Are you kidding me? After lying and stealing money from me, you're saying this now? Using your deceased father as an excuse is despicable. Now I understand exactly why your mom disowned you. Please don't say that. I'm really remorseful, he pleaded. It's too late for me to believe that now. I never want to see your face again. I'll contact you through my lawyer, so get the heck out of my apartment right now. If you don't leave, I'm calling the police. I kicked him out right then and there. After that, I successfully divorced Keith and collected the money he deceitfully took from me, along with alimony through my lawyer. When I threatened to fight in court if he didn't pay, he quickly transferred the full amount into my account. It seemed he had racked up some debts somewhere. Moreover, he had schemed 2 out of the 5 women he had an affair with. They came after him too, but he couldn't afford any more debts. He turned to his estranged mother for help, begging for mercy. I heard that even though she had disowned him, she didn't want him causing trouble for others, so she forced him to pay them back. In return, she sent him to work day and night on a deep-sea fishing boat owned by a relative until he paid off his debts. He's probably getting tossed around in rough waters and being worked rigorously right about now. On the other hand, I got my money back plus alimony, so I'm living a carefree single life. I'm hoping to meet someone sincere next time around. As I hold my niece in my arms, I gaze at the flowers blooming in the garden. My name is Olivia, and I'm 32 years old. My older brother, Johnson, is 4 years my senior, and the proud father of the little girl I'm holding. Our parents, both healthy and well, often visit to spend time with her. To keep my niece entertained today, I set up a small kiddie pool in the garden and filled it with water. As she plays, my mind drifts back to an event from 5 years ago. I was 27 then, and Johnson was 31. One day, he brought a woman home to meet the family. He had met her through a friend of a colleague and was eager for us to get to know her because he wanted to marry her. Her name was Emma, and she was the same age as Johnson. I remember her arriving in a crisp white suit, immaculate despite the risks of stains. She had a reserved demeanor, answering questions only when asked, likely out of nervousness. Their conversation was polite but bland, touching on topics like cold hometowns and tasty fish. Curious, I asked Emma what she liked about Johnson. Her response struck me as odd. He's someone I can introduce to anyone without embarrassment. It wasn't a comment about his personality or any intrinsic quality, just something superficial. A slight unease crept over me that day, an unease that would later grow into certainty. Shortly after Christmas, Johnson was transferred to Los Angeles. It was a promotion, and he was excited, but it complicated their wedding plans. Since the transfer makes it tricky to plan a wedding, I want to do it before I move to Los Angeles, Johnson suggested, but Emma preferred to wait. Although he wouldn't be leaving for LA for another 9 months, she was adamant about delaying the wedding until after the move. It'll sound cooler at the wedding to say I'm working in LA, she explained. Her priority was impressing others. You could say you're planning to move to LA next year, my mother suggested, but Emma was firm. I want to introduce him as someone already working in LA. It has to be the real Los Angeles. Johnson, ever laid back, agreed to her wishes, and they settled on a hectic schedule, flying back the day before the wedding and returning to LA right after. That wasn't the only issue. The wedding costs fell on our family as well. The wedding planner had suggested placing gerberas on each table, but Emma insisted on roses, saying gerberas looked cheap. Her vanity made me increasingly uncomfortable. Then the day before the wedding, something happened that heightened my discomfort. While at work, I received an unusual call from my mother. Her trembling voice on the phone sent a chill down my spine. "Your dad, he's bleeding internally." My hand shook as I held the phone. My dad, who had never been one for health checkups, smoked, drank, and rarely exercised, was the picture of unhealthiness. I recalled an article I'd read about how colon cancer progresses without symptoms. My mom informed me that he'd been rushed to the hospital. I immediately left work to be by his side. Seeing my dad lying in that hospital bed was a shock. Though I had tried to prepare myself, the reality was even more jarring. His face was pale, almost blue. Why hadn't he gone for regular checkups? Maybe this could have been prevented. But there was a more immediate concern. The wedding was the next day. "The wedding is tomorrow," I said to my mom, holding my dad's hand. I tried to stay strong, at least for them. "Yes, and it's too late to cancel the venue now," she replied. "If only we had known, we could have had the wedding before the move to LA. But illness comes without warning." It was the eve of the wedding and panic set in. My brother had likely already boarded his flight, making it impossible to reach him by phone. Desperate, I called Emma and explained the situation, my voice trembling with anxiety. "Hospitalized?" Emma's tone shifted immediately. "Yes, so we're all a bit unsettled," I replied, trying to convey the gravity of the situation. But her response was shocking. "While it's good he didn't collapse on the day, he can still make it to the wedding, right?" For a moment, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she be so dismissive? I thought I might not have explained things clearly, so I tried again. "My father was rushed to the hospital today. Right now, he's—" Before I could finish, Emma cut me off sharply. "What are you talking about? It's my big day. He has to be there even if he's dying." Your father will attend, and you and your mother too, of course. You're on reception duty, so come early. Attend. How could she expect us to attend under these circumstances? I stood there stunned as she continued. We've invited 200 people, you know. It would look terrible if the groom's parents didn't show up. People might think we're on bad terms. Am I supposed to explain this to every guest? The bride is the heroine of the wedding. I can't have people misunderstanding. Please don't embarrass me. Sickness is all in the mind, right? Tell your father to buck up and be there tomorrow. Oh, and tell the groom I requested his dad's attendance. I don't want to look desperate. See you at the venue tomorrow. With that, she abruptly ended the call. I stood there, gripping my phone, my hands trembling in disbelief. What happened? My mother asked, her voice full of concern. That woman, I struggled to find the words as I recounted the unbelievable conversation I just had with Emma. My mother was speechless. That's just. I know, I said, barely able to articulate my thoughts. Then, from seemingly nowhere, a faint voice interrupted us. I'll be there. We turned to see my father, weak but determined, squeezing my mother's hand. I'll go for my son's big day, even if I have to crawl. Tears welled up in my eyes, moved by his fatherly compassion, but his next words were more resolute. I had my suspicions, but now I'm certain. It's good that I realize this now. We can't let him marry such an uncaring woman. It's my duty to protect my son. At first, I thought my father's words were a result of delirium. But as I listened more closely, I realized he was right. Emma's vanity had pushed me to my limit as well. We quickly devised a plan to save Johnson from Emma's clutches, pretending to comply with her wishes while secretly plotting her comeuppance. On the day of the wedding, I arrived early to handle the reception. As guests began to arrive, Emma made her entrance in her wedding gown. I couldn't help but compare it to her usual white suits, which made her dress seem less striking. I had no intention of complimenting her. Ignoring my clear hostility, she asked, Your father is coming, right? The nerve of her. He'll be there, I replied, unable to hide my anger. You said he should come even if it kills him. He'll crawl if he has to. Really? Well, as long as it's not embarrassing, she replied nonchalantly before walking away. I felt a burning desire for retribution. The ceremony went off without a hitch, and soon the reception began. The hall was buzzing with chatter as 200 guests settled into their seats. Suddenly, a louder murmur rippled through the crowd. What's going on? I thought. But I already knew. There he was, my father in pajamas, seated in a wheelchair, covered with a blanket, and wearing an oxygen mask. My mother pushed him slowly into the venue. The MC, clearly flustered, checked the time and then announced the entrance of the bride and groom. With a fanfare, the newlyweds entered. When Johnson reached the front and saw my father, he shouted from the stage, Dad, what happened? His shocked voice set the room abuzz. Emma, standing beside him, looked confused. My father, struggling to speak through the oxygen mask, rasped out, Look at me. See, I made it, even if it kills me. Seizing the moment, I raised my voice, making sure everyone could hear. My father was suddenly hospitalized yesterday after collapsing. He's only just regained consciousness. Yet the bride, Emma, insisted he attend, saying it would look bad if the groom's parents were absent. Don't embarrass me, she said. So this is what happened. Johnson, who knew nothing of this, was speechless. My words hit him hard. He looked bewildered, his gaze darting between Emma, me, and our father. It's okay, Johnson, my father whispered faintly. I have no regrets in my life. Thank you, Mom, for everything. What's going on? Johnson demanded, turning to Emma, who stammered, Wait, hold on. That's not how it. She turned to me, but it was too late. Time to reveal everything, I said, my voice steady. Oh, and I forgot to mention, the bride also said, Don't tell anyone I asked you to get your father-in-law to attend. I don't want to seem desperate. Emma was panicking now. I told you not to say that. I mocked her. She told me not to tell anyone. The sound of my father's oxygen mask, eerily reminiscent of Darth Vader, filled the room as Emma and I stared each other down. The room fell silent, every guest watching us intently. Johnson, I continued. Dad had massive internal bleeding yesterday and was rushed to the hospital. The bathroom was reportedly covered in blood. But you were already on the plane, unreachable. So I informed Emma of the situation. Not a single word of concern from her. Just demands that he attend, even if it meant dying. I was beyond shocked, speechless. That's why Dad is here in this condition. What do you think? Are you really going to marry someone who thinks it's okay to sacrifice others for her own sake? I shared memories of our father with the room, recalling how he had always been there for Johnson. Remember, Dad? Like when you helped Johnson with that science project, the piggy bank contest. You made an amazing postbox piggy bank and won a prize. Or when you climbed trees at summer camp to catch beetles for him, even though you never caught any and fell from the tree. That part wasn't necessary. My father muttered softly through the mask, but no one seemed to hear him. Tears welled up in Johnson's eyes. Are you okay with a wife who can say such heartless things to a dad like that? That's right, me too. A voice suddenly called out from the audience. Turning around, I saw a heavily pregnant woman. I'm due any day now, yet Emma told me to come to the wedding no matter what. The bride is the heroine. Don't embarrass me, she said. Her belly looked ready to burst, and it must have been excruciating just to sit there. But the revelations didn't end. Me too. Another voice shouted. I just gave birth a month ago, and she said I wasn't sick. The situation spiraled out of control. Then came the clincher. I was just a friend of a friend of a friend, invited to pad the numbers. I hardly even know the bride. Even complete strangers were in attendance, bewildered by the chaos. Johnson was speechless. I wanted a big wedding, right? Your company has a lot of people, and it would look good for me too. I did it for you, asking everyone to attend. Emma's reasoning was falling apart. Then a sharp snap rang out. A woman had slapped Emma across the cheek, sending her crumpling to the floor. It was her mother. That woman. How could you? Her mother cried out. My daughter, she's always been like this. In elementary school, she'd say her dad looked shabby and shouldn't come to school events. Always caring about appearances, threatening to study abroad if her grades didn't improve. It was okay when it was just our family, but now she's troubling others. This is disgraceful. She then turned to us, deeply apologetic. I'm so sorry for my daughter's behavior. I know sorry isn't enough, but please forgive us. Emma's mother, able to scold and apologize for her daughter in such a situation, was admirable, so unlike Emma. But Emma protested. Why are you embarrassing me in front of everyone? You're my parent. She looked ready to lash out at her own mother. Enough, Johnson said, restraining the chaotic Emma. I'm sorry, really sorry to everyone. And Dad, I'm sorry I didn't know. My father took off his oxygen mask and said calmly, no worries. I couldn't stand her attitude, and I thought you'd suffer if you married her. What's it called? I even borrowed this Paco Paco. Wait, what? Emma gaped in astonishment. The Paco Paco mask my father referred to was just a plastic mask, not meant for oxygen inhalation. My mother, who worked part-time at a family restaurant, had used these 3D plastic masks. It looks more like a sick person, he had said, deciding to wear it after discussing it with my mother. From a distance, without a closer look, it could easily be mistaken for an oxygen mask. As for his internal bleeding and diagnosis, my father tossed away the thick cushion he had been sitting on. It was hemorrhoids. What? Hemorrhoids? The bride, groom, and the entire hall erupted in astonishment. Ouch, ouch, ouch. My father yelped as he tried to sit back in the wheelchair without the cushion, clearly still in pain. Come on, Dad, you can't sit without a cushion. You just had surgery, my mother scolded, picking up the cushion he had thrown. Then she turned to Emma's mother, who looked dejected. Please raise your head, she said. Not many can scold their child and apologize so sincerely. I'm truly impressed by your genuineness. Emma's mother, with tears streaming down her face, hugged my mother. My mother embraced her, comforting her. Everyone now understood. It's annulment time, Johnson spoke coldly to Emma, having witnessed everything. 5 years later, Emma's true nature, exposed at the wedding, led to her being disowned by relatives present, and naturally by her parents as well. Her vain nature seemed incurable, even with advice. Inviting complete strangers from her workplace to the wedding had made the entire fiasco known at her job, leading to an awkward resignation. I saw her once at a grocery store. She looked unkempt, wearing dirty clothes that hadn't been washed for days, her hair disheveled. I don't have a job. Can you help me reconcile with Johnson? She begged. He's in LA. I replied bluntly, refusing her plea. The waters filled up. My father called out, squatting by the side. He had been exposing his embarrassing ointment-covered backside for a while, but now seemed fine. And the pool looks cool, my niece Mary exclaimed as she ran off my lap toward the pool. Indeed, after that ordeal, my brother fell in love with and married a French woman in Los Angeles, who gave birth to Mary. She's 3 years old, with blue eyes and blonde hair, like a little doll, melting all our hearts. Mary joyfully splashed in the pool, light glinting off the water. Take care, a clear voice called out as my sister-in-law, Sophia, appeared holding flip-flops. Sorry for the mischief, she said cutely. I love how she tries to learn the language for us. There's a festival today. Let's go together tonight, I suggested. A festival? Yay, Sophia beamed, just like Mary.